Hello, you're watching News on K+. It is Saturday, February 2nd. These are today's headlines. Another incident at the Border Service. National Security Committee Academy Major General was found with gunshot wounds inside his office on Thursday night. Victims of the CRJ-200 plane crash are laid to rest in Kazakhstan. Memorial services were held in several cities. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is to defend itself from fake media. Irlan Idrisov names K+ channel and Respublika newspaper special weapons in the fight against Kazakhstan. The death of National Security Committee Academy head Major General Talgat Yesetov marks another tragedy in a long list of border service-related events. In less than 1 year, this is the third such incident pertaining to the wardens of the national frontiers. We turn to our first story for a detailed investigation.
On Thursday evening, several media sources reported that the head of the Frontier Service Academy of the National Security Committee, Talgat Yesetov, was shot to death in his office. It is possible the Major General committed suicide, as a death note was allegedly found at the scene. The Almaty Garrison Prosecution Office instigated criminal proceedings on the matter, while the main military prosecutor issued only a brief report with already established facts. On January 31, 2013, at around 7:55 p.m., the body of Major General Yesetov was found inside his office with a gunshot wound. The 48-year-old Yesetov was a career bodyguard officer. After graduating from the Dzerzhinsky Command Frontier Service Academy, he served as a chief of staff in Makanchi and Ucharal bodyguard detachments and administered the regional border service agencies Soltustik and Ontustik. For the last few years, Yesetov headed the Frontier Service Academy of the National Security Committee. The general's suicide has become the third major incident involving border service over the past year. The country's political authorities must pay serious attention to the systematic negative incidents within border security forces and finally reconsider the agency's management policy. I believe it's the only way to stop this chain of tragic events. According to a veteran medical officer, Vladimir Steblyanko, the psychologically unstable personnel are never appointed to key military positions involving a great extent of risk. Making career a top priority significantly increases the chances of mental breakdowns, resulting in suicide in case of professional failures. The preliminary investigation classifies Yesetov's death as a suicide. Nevertheless, the incident is sure to trigger a wave of new speculations in mass media circles.
The Scott Airline plane crash victims are laid to rest in Kazakhstan. Memorial and funeral services in honor of the flight crew and passengers were held in Almaty, Karaganda, Shymkent, and Petropavlovsk on Friday. To recap, 21 people were on board of the Kokshetau-Almaty flight. There were no survivors.
Friends, colleagues and family members came to pay final respects to Alexander Sharapov, the co-pilot of the ill-fated Flight 760. Everyone in attendance shared warm memories of the 43-year-old man for whom aviation was the only true passion in life. This is a tragic incident for the family, for his loved ones, and for us. He was an excellent man with great technical skills. Everyone loved and respected him at work. He was on good terms with everyone. Alexander's mother recalled that on the day of the flight, her son left the house at 4 a.m. She couldn't see him off as usual. Alexander was the only son in the family. He died on my anniversary. I wanted to get in touch and tell him the venue for the celebration, and it turned out I talked to him for the last time. Askar Husainov was also buried at Kinsay Cemetery on Friday. He was returning to Almaty from Kokshetau after visiting his parents. Askar's father saw him off to the plane and refused to believe that his son died later that day. Askar was to obtain his master's degree this year and planned to start a family. I understand how hard it is now for the family and for Yiriken, but I want to find strength to live through this. We have 2 daughters and we'll have grandchildren. Karaganda residents also paid their respects to their countrymen. Vladimir Yevdokimov was a flight captain, and his colleagues say that he was an experienced pilot with 20,000 hours of flight behind him. Another crew member, flight attendant Irina Krivonosova, began her career in aviation at the age of 20 and never looked back for the next 25 years, only recently considering a retirement. She dedicated her life to her job. I trained Irina as she started flying when she was a young and beautiful girl. She started on domestic flights across the former Soviet Union and later international destinations. She was a very responsible and hardworking woman who really wanted to work and fly. Funerals of Shymkent locals, second pilot Svetoslav Babayan and flight attendant Dina Svandiarova was also held on Friday with around 200 people in attendance. Both crew members were only 23 years old. Dina left a 3-year-old daughter, while Svetoslav is the only child in an aviation family. He was a truly outstanding man, and all of us have lost something today. But we need to carry on with our lives and make sure he will be looking down at us with pride. Families of Shymkent victims received around $13,000 each from the regional administration, while those in Karaganda were paid $7,000 by the governor. We are transferring the money to the mother of the second pilot. There needs to be an open bank account so that we could transfer the money, and we need to make sure that the money will get in the right hands. On January 29, 2013, Scott Airlines Flight 760 crashed in thick fog near Almaty, Kazakhstan, killing all 16 passengers and 5 crew members on board. Foreign specialists are now looking into the flight recorder's data to understand the causes of the incident.
Flight recorders found on the crash site were taken to the Interstate Aviation Committee on Friday. As was reported, experts began the decoding process.
Experts are attempting to restore the flight data recorders damaged in the crash. At the same time, Kazakhstan Civil Aviation Committee has launched a series of unscheduled inspections on 31 airline companies operating the CRJ model jets. Criminal proceedings were instigated over the death of 21 passengers and crew members resulting from the plane crash near Almaty under the charges of infringement on flight safety and aircraft operation regulations entailing the death of civilians. The article stipulates 4 to 10 years of imprisonment.
Head of the Ministry of Emergency Situations Vladimir Bashkov found out about the earthquake from First Deputy Prime Minister Bakarjan Sagintayev, announced the Deputy PM himself at the ministry's board meeting.
The first Vice Prime Minister Bakarjan Sagintayev said that the Emergency Ministry has significantly improved its work as compared to last year. Still, he believes there is room for improvement. For instance, the senior official sees the necessity of a mobile network early warning system. The Emergency Minister Vladimir Bashko explained that an attempt to set it up was made already, but one of the carriers imposed a service charge fee of 3 cents per SMS. The talks with the telecom are still ongoing, and there is hope they will be productive. Sagintayev also used the opportunity to note the increased reliance of local population in foreign sources while finding out information about earthquakes. Just recently, a quake of 6.6 magnitude was registered in the Almaty region, luckily leaving no victims or significant damage. For instance, I learned about the earthquakes that struck Almaty region and was felt by local residents from my relatives. I called the emergency minister and he didn't know about it. In our current system, the minister learns about something only after it appeared on Twitter.
Foreign Minister Yerlan Idrisov announced Kazakhstan is forced to protect itself from banker Mukhtar Ablazov's informational attacks. The loud statement was made in Germany, where the head of the state agency is currently on a visit. According to Idrisov, the informational resources that Mukhtar Ablazov created, including Respublika newspaper and K+ channel, are conducting special operations against Kazakhstan, and the authorities are compelled to stand guard. How successful is the informational defense doctrine being implemented? Find out in this report.
Kazakhstan is ready to protect itself from the so-called fake independent media, including Respublika newspaper and K+ channel, said Foreign Minister Yerlan Idrisov on Friday during the meeting of Berlin Eurasian Club. The diplomat talked about the former banker Mukhtar Ablazov withdrawing $6 billion from the country, founding several media companies and leading them on a special operation against Kazakhstan. Respublika is not a real independent newspaper and K+ is not really an independent channel. These are the special weapons created by Ablazov to target Kazakhstan. In the meantime, the country is heavily attacked by International Press Freedom Index. According to Reporters Without Borders, Kazakhstan dropped to 160th position in the annual rankings. The head of the Journalists' Union doesn't need to see the statistics to admit the worsening situation, which can only be improved from the inside. First of all, we need to rely on ourselves in this regard. People believe that the West will help us. However, it has its own problems. The oil comes before truth, after all. Kazakhstan National University professor of journalism Gulmira Sultanbayeva analyzes freedom of speech from an academic standpoint. She says that media develops in two opposite directions, democratic and authoritarian, forming either confronting or submissive relations with the authorities. It is not possible to shut down all the independent and opposition media in Kazakhstan, allowing only state-run press. This is nonsense. Unlike Turkmenistan, we cannot bundle all media entities into one. But in fact, there isn't that great of a difference between Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan after all. At the end of 2012, the General Prosecutor's Office and the courts of Almaty declared 4 independent media outlets as extremist and banned their activity in the country.
Yerlan Idrisov raised a heated and at times not entirely diplomatic debate, and while discussing domestic politics on European soil, he made no attempts to sound politically correct.
In his speech, Idrisov described Kazakhstan as a country with a rich history of success, saying that the authorities are trusted and supported by the population. Responding to MEP Paul Murphy regarding the need for an independent investigation of the bloodshed in Zhanaozen, the official referred to the request of non-partner approach, defamatory in nature, which hints in total distrust to the authorities of Kazakhstan. The foreign minister also said that the termination of opposition media is caused by the struggle with, quote, an escaped felon Ablazov, end quote. Murphy in turn defended the journalists and noted that only through independent media people learn the truth about the situation in Kazakhstan. The MEP intends to continue seeking justice and visit the country again later in the year. Idrisov dismissed all these statements as groundless accusations and speculation based on information of people who are interested in destabilizing the situation in the Republic of Kazakhstan. He continued claiming that someone used the protests in Zhanaozen and turned them into acts of violence. He also explained that nobody has the right to question the judicial system and judicial decisions in the Republic of Kazakhstan.
The Collective Security Treaty Organization Secretary General Nikolai Bardyuzha announced that the organization is moving away from policing functions. At a televised Q&A session between Moscow and Astana on Friday, he stated that member states of the security organization will no longer bring in troops to interfere in mass riots. In the following story, our reporters compare this move with the latest instructions given by the Kazakh president to his own army.
The CSTO Secretary General Nikolai Bardyuzha delivered the report on the results of the past year via online video conference at the Astana office of news agency RIA Novosti. Answering a reporter's question on whether the organization's armed forces can be used to suppress riots in a member state, Bardyuzha didn't leave much room for interpretation of the CSTO new policies. We want to leave the policing functions behind and, to be honest, never under any circumstances the CSTO leadership composed of presidents of states have posed the question in such a way as to exploit the potential of the organization to take part in suppression of any riots or resolution of internal political problems. Nothing like that ever happened, and therefore I have not heard of such agreements. At the same time, during the recently held meeting with the heads of security agencies, the president suddenly asked to strengthen the role of the armed forces in maintaining security in the country. Nazarbayev said that otherwise external forces can use the national army for internal destabilization. What external forces these might be remained unclear. Taking into account the external challenges, it is important to strengthen the role of the armed forces in the security of the state, society and the citizens. I instructed the Ministry of Defense to re-evaluate the entire arsenal of the country's military forces that can be used to counter the attempts to destabilize the internal state of affairs in Kazakhstan. With the example of Zhanaozen violence, the population is well aware of how exactly internal and armed forces can be used to counter riots in Kazakhstan. Unfortunately, just like the increasing number of special operations, events like these are often accompanied by the deaths of civilians, while the involvement of external forces remains unproven.
Also at the session between Astana and Moscow, Secretary General Bardyuzha said that yet another exit from the CSTO by Uzbekistan will not affect the treaty organization's further operations.
The withdrawal of Uzbekistan didn't affect the system of collective security. It is not a secret that Uzbekistan had its own stance in the most sensitive areas of collective security. In this regard, the Uzbek party was never part of the most important events. Therefore, the absence of our Uzbek partners doesn't really make a difference in our activity. On December 19, 2012, official Tashkent once again declared its withdrawal from the Collective Security Treaty Organization, parting from the rest of the treaty members including Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia and Tajikistan. Experts link this development to Uzbekistan's intention to develop better relations with the US and NATO. The Secretary General of CSTO, Nikolai Bardyuzha, made it clear on Friday that Uzbekistan's support isn't crucial for the organization after all.
That is all we have time for this week. Don't forget to tune into Vlast KZ with Asalbek Abdulov on Monday. Have a great weekend.